Over the course of 2 in-game weeks, we attract traders into Prim. Using the traders as prospectors and gatherers, we add another Protectron and a Sentry Bot to our machine ranks. We designated the Sentry Bot as Igor 2.0. He's much more intimidating than the Protectron Igors, but has just as much personality. We knew that at times we wouldn't be able to protect Prim. Our main force might be absent. So we decided to put a man up for sheriff. After the people accepted him, he deputized his 2 brothers. Effectively, they kept people in check while we were busy sending out patrols and scavenging for needed supplies. It wasn't until the deputy from Bonnie Springs came with terrible news did we know that shit had officially hit the fan. Apparently, when the boss and the NCR got to the little town, they didn't take a liking to the people who very openly supported us. They interrogated the sheriff and the mayor. When neither told them anything, they didn't know anything, they executed them for treason. You what, mate? They aren't even citizens.iso. Apparently none of the edgy players understood anything about the political game I had been playing. All of Bonnie Springs took up arms against them, killing 4 players and 2 NPCs. In return, the players killed everyone in the town. Though they didn't target children, they shot anyone they saw fighting, running, or otherwise. One of the ranger edgelords had a post detailing his sniping of 2 farmers trying to run to Goodsprings. I shit you not. They just massacred an entire town because Enclave supporters. We should get the deputy to the strip. If we can get him on the radio, New Vegas will turn against the NCR and boss. God damn it, no! I shook my head and kicked a stool. Strength roll of 13. Kicked it a few feet away. There's no way we'd be able to get him there. Without us, he might get there, but as soon as he opens his mouth, the NCR will silence him or Mr. New Vegas permanently. The deputy had broken down once he had gotten to us. It was truly a sad sight to see him in such a condition. Volt, send your fastest man to Goodsprings. Tell them we believe they are next on the enemy's hit list. We want them to evacuate to Prim immediately. I want you to see to it personally that every single trader that comes through Prim hears about what happened to Bonnie Springs. Also, I'll be taking Conrad and Richardson with me on a mission. I need you to see to it that in my absence that every man in Prim has a gun in his hands and knows how to use it. The NCR and boss are going to be coming for us, and after I do what I do, they'll be extra fucking pissed. Me, Conrad, and Richardson set off that night at a light jogging pace. We were working against time, and it had a bone to pick with us. A few hours before sunrise, we met Volt's man on the road. Almost all of Goodsprings was with him. Apparently, the main force of the lynch mob would hit Goodsprings by dawn. We couldn't stay on the road anymore and risk running into the NCR or boss. Even with Richardson, we would be easy prey to all that plot armor. Getting off the road, we began heading north at paces to surpass the Metal Gear. But really, we went at lightning speeds in comparison to before we had the Igors. We made a week trip in one night. We were south of Sloan when we had a GM random encounter. This encounter was meant to do one of 2 things. Give us something we need, or give us information we want. The random encounter was one all too familiar to myself. A fucking Deathclaw. A Deathclaw burst out from its den and began roaring at us. I did a perception check right away. Maybe I'd get a friend for Richardson. Nope. This guy was gravely injured. Bullet wounds and laser-burnt flesh covered him. He was, of course, on the brink of death, and there was no stopping the end for this big beauty. One thing I did notice, though, that didn't involve its imminent death, was its immense size. It was obviously older than Richardson. It was at least a meter taller, and its arms were longer. It was hands down the biggest deathclaw I had ever seen. One thing Richardson had going for him is that he was much faster and had more muscle mass. You see, wild deathclaws ate anything that they could find. While it often consisted of longhorners, brahmin, or coyotes, the greatest delicacy for any carnivorous animal is human meat. Plenty of fat, plenty of muscle, and plenty of bone marrow. The wild deathclaw may have eaten a dozen humans in its life. Richardson, double that within a month. That's not including the countless amounts of meat we can't eat that we gave to him. Richardson had been lagging behind for some time. He spotted a carcass and went to check it out. After realizing another deathclaw had killed the animal, it wasn't recognizable. He ran back to us. The big motherfucker was about to charge us when Richardson got between us. It was clear that Richardson was facing off against an alpha male. My character knew that non-alpha deathclaws wouldn't dare face an alpha unless mating was on the line. In pack versus pack fights, the two alphas would fight. Either Richardson thought he was the alpha, or he was defying all of his natural programming. Because as soon as the alpha reared up to try and intimidate Richardson, which is what alphas do, Richardson initiated the attack without a second glance. The first few seconds were lightning speed slashes and punches. I could tell from what Richardson was doing, staying low and swinging low, that he wasn't trying to kill the alpha outright. He was measuring up how much of a threat the alpha was. Richardson pulled away in an instant and circled the battered alpha. It was strong. Richardson had allowed the alpha to hit him a few times on his neck and lower back, where his scales were thickest. Richardson had done some damage of his own, but purposely nothing serious. Just cut and slashed at the alpha's legs. A few seconds of circling later, and Conrad raises his RCW to start shooting. No, if we do, the beast will charge us and kill us. Richardson can take him down. Richardson stopped in his circling and slashed the ground in front of him, putting huge holes in the earth. One thing you watch out for in the wild are holes like these. It means a deathclaw was sharpening their claws. The alpha came down on all fours and charged at Richardson. A few feet into its charge and it began limping. The attack Richardson made hadn't been a prodding attack, it was a strategy. Due to the injured legs, the alpha was slow, even more so for another deathclaw, even more for Richardson. Richardson waited until the very last second to parry the alpha, in an attempt to keep Richardson out from behind him, which would have meant death. The alpha turned on its heels. It would have been better off running away. Richardson somehow understood balance. Seems like a strange concept, but Richardson understood that if you leaned forward, it'd be easy to be pushed forward. He also understood the general concept of kinetic energy and momentum. When the alpha turned, he'd be fighting against all of his own momentum. Timed with a perfect blunt strike of his shoulder, he put the alpha on its ass. The alpha didn't have any time to attempt to get up. Richardson was on top of him. Richardson's right leg pinning the alpha's left leg, and Richardson's left leg dug into the ground for stability. After he cemented his pin on the Alpha, he began to rip apart his abdomen with huge arcing slashes with his claws. His head was down as to force the Alpha to try and push him off with his arm strength, instead of trading blows with him, which the Alpha was far from able. In a last attempt to escape with its life, the Alpha kicked Richardson away with his right leg. The Alpha flipped on its stomach, but before it could push itself off into a sprint, Richardson planted his foot firmly on the back of the Alpha's neck. The Alpha tried once to get up, but was met with Richardson pressing down hard with his talons. The Alpha lay breathing hard under Richardson's tight grip, one eye looking right at Richardson. I wanted to call Richardson off because this was the most unnatural thing I had ever seen Richardson and Deathclaws in general do. But how could I? Richardson had just beat the ever-loving shit out of the second most dangerous beast in the Mojave. The first being himself, of course. Richardson didn't gloat for long to the dying Alpha. A few growls and a few strange noises later, and Richardson was done communicating. He reached down slowly, and the Alpha's flame went out with a deafening crunch. I guess Deathclaw necks are harder to break. A few seconds after killing the Alpha, Richardson reared up high and put his arms into the air, with a truly magnificent roar. But in all honesty, it sounded too much like a literal roar. In all honesty, he may have said war. I had heard that some very intelligent Deathclaws could simulate human speech. They were known to mispronounce W's. Peter, this may be the coolest moment in my entire life. Wait until you see the Enclave. We gave Richardson a few seconds to bask in the sun before I called him over. He gazed at me, then began sniffing at the air. It was unlike him to not do as I say unless he thought there may be a threat. I turned and began surveying the area. Nothing. When I got back to looking at Richardson, he began slowly jogging in the direction the Deathclaw had come from. Let's go see what he's looking for. We watched as Richardson crested a hill, turned his head, and began his descent down towards the unknown. When we followed, Conrad and I looked like we had just seen a gold mine. Richardson wasn't jogging anymore. He had his head close to the ground and sniffing at the quickly thrown together nest and its 7 unborn inhabitants. Holy shit. Conrad, shit can't be holy. Shut the fuck up. We approached the nest and crouched down to look at the eggs. So it turns out, Conrad, Richardson just beat the ever-living shit out of an alpha female. There's possibly 2 options here for us. Either the male was nearby, meaning the female wouldn't mate with Richardson, or Richardson didn't give a fuck and just wanted to kill her. Or he killed her for the eggs. I looked at Richardson and pondered the possibility for a minute. Why? She was obviously going to die soon, whether or not Richardson tore her a new one or not. He knew she wouldn't give up her eggs willingly. It was a mercy killing to save her eggs. I looked at Richardson again and searched his eyes for some deeper plan. It was obvious to me that Richardson was much smarter than he seemed. And he seemed to be one of the smartest Deathclaws ever. Richardson knew the female. Maybe it was his mother. But he knew her nonetheless. Conrad looked at me confused as Richardson leaned in close to listen. He saw her and knew something was wrong. Think about it from the perspective of Richardson. Say this was his mother. Why would she be so hurt and near death in the middle of nowhere? Why would she put her eggs in a thrown-together nest without another Deathclaw in sight? Wherever Richardson's pack was living is ransacked, overrun, destroyed. If I'm right, he knows this and knows he can only preserve his pack by seeing to it that these eggs survive. Sometimes it scares me how smart he is. For a Deathclaw, Richardson finds a way to give me a look of gloom. I must have been dead on the money. After we dumped out Conrad's bag and placed the eggs safely inside, we began a slower pace, north, past Sloan. We always kept the road to our left as a sort of indicator of our location. If we got into a firefight and had to think fast. A little past Sloan, Richardson stopped in his tracks and stared off into the distance across the road. Oh no, Dot Feels. What was apparently a mine of sorts had a single entrance. Beside the entrance was a big construction vehicle, obviously broke down for some time. But in the entrance to the mine were dozens of Deathclaws piled on top of one another like sacks of grain. I looked at Richardson and for some reason expected to see him sobbing. A cold and emotionless gaze was all I received. In this moment I realized that Richardson was so much like me it was scary. He was saved only because he was too young to fight. His entire family, all of his people, slaughtered for what they were. I understood that some would say it must have been done, but for Richardson it was a realization about the world of man. Mercy had been alienated when people gave up on the old world. Luckily, Richardson met me, someone he could align himself with. How did Conrad and I feel? We were just glad Richardson was on our side. Imagine something like him if it was out to kill humanity as a whole.